Hello, how are you? I am really tired because I went to study and now I'm finally back. But I thought I should discuss this book because it deserves that. It is just so wonderful that I need to talk about this in detail with spoilers. So, if anyone is watching this and they haven't read The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco or Umberto Eco, then please skip this video. I have a review of it without any spoilers. Can definitely check that out. Okay, so I marked all the lines that I liked from this book. And after this, I lost my sticky notes. That's why I only underlined them. So I'll have to look for them. But I really want to discuss certain things. So let's do it. First of all, this thing, this is so beautiful. Like, this is a map of the monastery. Hold, wait, 1 second. My bookmark fell. This is so symbolic because as soon as I started opening the book to discuss it, the bookmark fell. It was like, we don't need this anymore. Well, so let's give a brief introduction about the monastery because otherwise it will be so out of context. But I am hoping that people who are watching this have already read this so they'll know. But still, there is a monk who is basically writing a story by recalling from his earlier days. He went to a monastery, he went to an abbey with this detective, William of Baskerville, and there he witnessed a very uh, huge event basically, and a lot of things happened which the book unfolds through its chapters. But the thing is, this is a wonderful thing to have a map of a place in a book. I like that very much. And the most iconic part of the monastery is the edificium, where they have the library where they cannot enter. I think every book, especially detective mystery books like this, should have a map of the place because it instantly engages the reader and uh, more psychological language. It stimulates the hypothalamus and the hippocampus region of the brain where where we store spatial memory, basically the location and stuff. And this makes it easier to navigate through the imagination while imagining where the characters are. So I found that very helpful because personally I'm a very bad navigator. I confuse between directions a lot, but having a map like this was just so useful. Okay, now that is the map which really impressed me. And then let's talk about the way the story is presented. This is a very elaborate discussion, okay? I am not going to be technical and I'm not going to talk with structure. I am going to elaborate and discuss like discussions should be. So it may happen that I forget what I'm going to say and I might not say everything. But whatever I'm going to say, I'm going to really elaborate it. Anyways, basically, how the story is presented is it is a story which is being told, narrated by someone who is already in his old age, and they are basically recalling their younger days. I mean, he is recalling his younger days, and here the he is Atso of Milk, who is a monk. And what is interesting is how we are introduced to Atso. That is, while he was recalling his younger days, he wrote everything down in a manuscript, and that manuscript is being discovered by our narrator, I should say, by someone, by the author. Anyways, it's all fiction, but it just makes you feel like it's real, which is a nice feeling. It makes it all the more thrilling and interesting for a reader. So, first, there is, before everything, there is this page, naturally, a manuscript. I don't know if you can read it. And then the author writes about how he came across this manuscript and then it was lost, but then he had notes of it. And then he also gives us some clues. Here he writes down the time period used in the medieval ages. And then the actual story narrated by Atso starts, and it is presented in the course of 7 days. Every day, it is given as first day, second day, third day, and every day the time periods are mentioned. They have 6 time periods according to the schedule of the monks in that abbey, and the time periods have names which uh, we don't use normally. And this was a very confusing part for me. I don't know, I kept forgetting what the individual names meant. Like, for example, Vespers meant 4:30 p.m. and Compline meant around 6 p.m. because the monks went to bed before 7. So all these names I kept forgetting which time period they referred to. So that was very annoying, but it's okay. It really gave that medieval feel. And then I would like to read the first line, the first few lines, because it is the structure is so, it gives the feeling of this old fashioned medieval environment. So let's read it. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This was beginning with God, and the duty of every faithful monk would be repeated. Sorry, would be to repeat every day with chanting humility, the one never changing event whose incontrovertible truth can be asserted. So, there is a feeling of auspiciousness every time God is mentioned, and even a regular discussion or conversation and descriptions especially are presented with such beautiful literal structures. I just It's just so beautiful. Okay, let's talk about the first ever sticky note I pasted because I was so enchanted by the text. After reading it, I was like, what did I just read? It completely blew my mind. So I pasted a sticky note here where there are some conversations going on. I think this was a debate between Ubertino and William. William of Baskerville is our detective, and Ubertino is like a friend to him, a very close friend who is also in the monastery. So here they are talking about something, and basically they were inquisitors who questioned, interrogated criminals to get out the truth, to get them to confess the truth. And Ubertino and William are discussing how if you pressure them too much and if you give them too much pain, then they are compelled to confess some things that they did not even do. That's why it's just you can't ever get the truth out of them just by pressuring them. William is saying this, but Ubertino is saying no. Why would that happen? They are pressurized, they want to get out of the pain. That's why they will confess the truth. So here they are discussing, and in the course of discussion, William explains how they might have a lust for pain, and Ubertino is so shocked. He's like, lust for pain? And then Ubertino says, lust? And William replies, yes, there is a lust for pain, as there is a lust for adoration, and even a lust for humility. If it took so little to make the rebellious angels direct their ardor away from worship and humility toward pride and revolt, what can we expect of a human being? There, now you know. This was the thought that struck me in the course of my inquisitions, and this is why I gave up that activity. I lacked the courage to investigate the weakness of the wicked because I discovered they are the same as the weaknesses of the saintly. Oh my god, what? It's just, I'm just so mind blown every time I read these things because here William says why he left the work of an inquisitor, and he explains that it's a weakness to lie or confess something that they didn't do because they are under so much pain, and he thinks that he lacks the courage to investigate the weakness of the wicked because he discovered they are the same as the weakness of the saintly. Even the saintly have this weakness. They are so compelled, uh, they are so attracted to the idea of humility and to the idea of revolt or worship. I should say, they are so attracted to the idea of worship and humility, as William says here, that they do certain things that they don't even want to do and they wouldn't do under normal conditions. But the lust compels them to do that. And this idea is so important for the plot as it unfolds. I think these lines were written beautifully. Okay, that is there. One second, let me find the next paragraph. Okay, I have underlined a lot of things too, but I did not paste a sticky note. I don't know if I'll find them, but if I do, then I will definitely talk about them. Okay, so the next paragraph is this is also a conversation between William and who? I think it's Jorge. There was a debate between Gorkhe and William. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I did not want to say George because it was written originally in Italian, and I don't know, okay. They pronounce it Jorge, although I could be wrong. I don't know. It just sounds right. Jorge sounds right, okay. So they were basically having a debate and a heated debate about whether laughing is all right, it is whether it is virtuous or not virtuous, and then every William and the old man, which is Jorge, both were putting their points, arguments, and then William said, but as the Areopagite teaches, God can be named only through the most distorted things. And Hugh of St. Victor reminded us that the more the simile becomes dissimilar, the more the truth is revealed to us under the guise of horrible and indecorous figures, the less the imagination is sated in carnal enjoyment, and is thus obliged to perceive the mysterious hidden under the turpitude of the images. I know that line of reasoning, uh, Jorge says this, and I confess with shame that it was the chief argument of our order when the Cluniac abbots came combated the Cistercians. Oh my God, what is happening to me? But Saint Bernard was right. Little by little, the man who depicts monsters and portents of nature to reveal the things of God per speculum et in enigmate comes to enjoy the very nature of the monstrosities he creates and to delight in them. And as a result, he no longer sees except through them. So basically, what William is saying here is that whatever we consider good, whatever we consider virtuous, ultimately we are putting a limit to God's creations. And that's why we are not able to know the whole God, because if God created this universe, then He also created evil and He also created laughter. And what laughter does is, and what jesting does is, it distorts the reality, it exaggerates to bring out laughs and make comedy. And God can be understood through those distortions better because it is more than the one half that we are seeing, that is the good half. God also created horrible things, so God is there in horrible things too. And that's why distortion is a way to know God. This is important because the first monk who died was Adelmo, Adelmo of, oh no, I forgot. Where was he from? Okay, Adelmo died. He died by suicide. But the thing is, he was an illuminator. He used to draw illustrations aside texts, and he would distort the real things to great levels. And Gorge was extremely against it because he's against laughter, and it is a very important plot in the course of the story. So, this is, I think, this text, this extract is very enlightening because God is also horrible things if He created the whole universe, and it is so valid to say. I think it is a valid argument that He can be understood better through distortions of reality rather than just knowing the good and knowing a perfect ideal reality. And the counter argument is also very valid, that the more a person indulges in such distortions and imagines and thinks of such distortions, the monstrosities, the more he becomes of it, because in his mind he's only having the thoughts of that thing. But I I thought that maybe there is a middle ground, which is uh, moderation is the key. As always, someone should try to manage everything, manage their thoughts, and know about everything moderately. Too much excess of anything is bad. And the end of this story actually kind of reveals that only, that excess of anything is bad. Okay, that was that. The next one is here. Sometimes I put a sticky note aside extracts that are not that enlightening but very relatable or was funny for some reason, but yeah. Oh, here the next sticky note I've pasted here when William and Nicholas are speaking. Nicholas is like um, the I forgot his official job in the monastery, but he makes things. I forgot what his official job was. Just a second, I find it. He's like a he's like a he makes things, okay, that's what I remember. Never mind. So they are talking, and basically Nicholas is talking about magic with William, and William says, but there are two forms of magic. There is a magic that is the work of the devil and which aims at a man's downfall, through artifices of which it is not licit to speak. But there is a magic that is divine, where God's knowledge is made manifest through the knowledge of man, and it seems to transform nature, and one of its ends is to prolong man's very life. And this is holy magic, to which the learned must devote themselves more and more, not only to discover new things, but also to rediscover many secrets of nature that divine wisdom had revealed to the Hebrews, the Greeks, to other ancient peoples, and even today to the infidels. And I cannot tell you all the wonderful things on optics and the science of vision to be read in the books of the infidels. And Christian knowledge must regain possession of all this learning, taking it from the pagans and infidels. Tamquam ab inustis possessoribus, as they had no right to hold it. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I don't know Latin, okay? So I don't know. But here, William is basically countering superstitions. People back then had a superstition that any form of magic is like the face of the devil. And that is what William is saying, that there are two forms of magic. Not all magic is bad. And he's talking about science, which is not very common in the 14th century, definitely, obviously. And he's explaining how that the good form of magic was made by God Himself, and it was made by God to prolong man's very life. And this just shows how in that environment William is this person who thinks ahead of its time. He's truly intelligent, and he's also an open minded person. he supports technology and he understands the great use of technology. And the way he explains it is so intelligent. The way he counters superstitions is just so intelligent. Because by saying that the magic can nicely help the human beings, he's just making his argument acceptable. I think that is a very good way of making valid arguments. You just somehow link them to how they will help the humankind. Yeah. But this just goes to show that William was so ahead of its time. He's like this one of a kind, open minded person who just has a broad range of thoughts and mindset. And he is stuck with these people who are just so superstitious and so trapped by the idea of God, which is apparently supposed to provide freedom. That, but it never becomes difficult for William to place his arguments because he's so intelligent and such a good orator. He speaks so eloquently about everything that he talks. Okay, and the next one, here Atsu and William are speaking, and he's talking about his predictions and deductions. And Atsu, every time he learns something from William, he's so mesmerized that, wow, I didn't think of that, but it is so simple. And then William says these lines that I liked very much. He says, um, okay, we need context for this. So basically, when William and Atso arrived at the monastery, the head of the monastery, basically Abu is his name, he prohibited them from visiting the library. He said, you can go anywhere you want, but you cannot go to the library. That is prohibited. And William decides to go to the library at night secretly. And Atso says, but why do you want to go there? There doesn't seem to be a link because Adelmo died by suicide. And William says that we have to know, we should know. And then uh, Atso says, then like, why do you want to know? What if that place has nothing to do with the murder? And then William says, because learning does not consist of only knowing what we must or we can do, but also of knowing what we could do and perhaps should not do. So, William explains how learning does not mean just knowing stuff, it also means knowing the possibilities and the theory, and also how to be careful while knowing. Too much knowing is also not good. Yeah, that is it. Okay. Then I lost my sticky notes and I have underlined certain lines, but I don't know how I'll find them. I don't know. Oh, I found one. Okay. So this is a relatable paragraph, relatable sentence. That's why I underlined it. It is not something very enlightening, but it is kind of comedic. Atso says, I sat in church near the central door as the masses were said, and so I fell devoutly asleep and slept a long time, because young people seem to need sleep more than the old who have already slept so much and are preparing to sleep for all eternity. I relate to this so much because I also need a lot of sleep and I'm tired so much all the time, literally. I'm exhausted. I need to sleep. People are like, why do you sleep so much? And I'm like, I need it. Yeah. So there is, this is also very funny. I found this paragraph which is really funny. Um, Basically, William uh, found this manuscript, not manuscript, but a write up by Venantius. Venantius is the next person who dies after Adelmo, and uh, he lost his lenses, which is the glasses that he had, and at that time it was very inaccessible to have glasses. Obviously, it's the 14th century. So he has the writer, but he does not have glasses. So, and so William is trying to console himself. He's saying, "At least we found something, even if I can't deduce it." And Atso is saying, "But you can't deduce it." And Atso is saying extremely demoralizing things, discouraging. And then William says, and also, yeah, I should add this. William asked Atso to write what he can see, copy it because Atso didn't know the language of the writer. So copy the stuff that he saw and then copy it in a bigger font. And after reading it also, William could not understand the meaning of it because it's just a riddle. So uh, then Atso says, even if you understand, even if you understand what was written, you still don't understand what this means. So we don't know how anything works. We are at the starting point again. We are at zero. And then, yeah, Atso says, so we know nothing and we are still where we started. I said with great dismay. This Atso says this, and then William stopped and looked at me with an expression not entirely benevolent. My boy, he said, you have before you a poor Franciscan who, with his modest learning and what little skill he owes to the infinite power of the Lord, has succeeded in a few hours in deciphering a secret code whose author was sure would prove sealed to all save himself. And you, wretched, illiterate rogue, dare say we are still where we started. So Venantius wrote it in a code and then William deciphered it in a few hours. Instead of appreciating that, actually saying, yeah, where this started. So I found this very funny. I like how William called him a wretched illiterate rogue. That wouldn't count as a slang in today's generation, but I really like old slangs. They had some weight for some reason. Wretched illiterate rogue. I completely understand William because he's doing all the thinking and all the work, and Atsu is just there with him as his assistant. And sometimes he's working so hard and he shows amazing uh, brilliance of his mind, presence of mind, and deduction ability, and still he's not getting the appreciation that he should get. So I understand. Yeah, actually, every line here has to be studied, but it's just so much to take in. That's why I want to read this again. And there is a whole chapter where Atso talks about the heretics with Ubertino, and heretics are people who discard the idea of God and the faith of Christianity. Basically, no, they don't discard it. Basically, they're against the default Christianity rules and regulations, and they preach their own philosophies and ideas about God. And among them was this man called Fra Dolcino, and he did horrible things, and that's why everyone, um, like the monks don't even take his name and don't even want to discuss his history or anything. And Atso is really curious to know who this person was. So he goes to Bettino to ask about him, and he's very uh, decisive. He wants to know it. So Bettino explains his history and why he's such a hated heretic. And every time Ubertino talks about something that Fra Dolcino preached or the history of some other heretics as well, Atso immediately counters it with, but people of your order are also doing that. And this whole argument, this whole conversation between them somehow shows that the people who are called heretics and are so hated by the monks, their actions and these monks' actions actually don't have that much difference. Still, they hate each other. And that is just so bizarre, and it goes to reflect our actual society where our hostilities are basically meaningless. We do the same thing, we have the same feelings, yet we hate each other for very peculiar reasons. I can't even say wrong reasons because in our minds we feel like it is the right reasons, but we never stop to think that if we were actually hearing the reasons why we hated each other, then it would sound so odd. Yeah, so that conversation really made me think. All right, it is. I've underlined a lot of things actually, but the video has already passed 30 minutes. So I should stop now. Maybe when I read it again, then I will have found more things to discuss and then I'll discuss them. Because if I want to discuss this book, I think I'll probably need days, continuous, consecutive days. It's so dense and it has so much that needs to be talked about. It's a beautiful book. Alright, that was it. I didn't think this video would get so long, but it became. It was really nice talking about this book and again gave me that haunting sense of thinking about these things, about all the fights that we have and all the wars that we have had because of religion, all the um, murders and genocides that we have had. It just pushes you to think, did, did we really have a valid reason to do all that? It's just, yeah. All right. Stay well. Please read this book again. Bye.